Hello, everyone. We have with us today Anvita Hariharan, who plays Carnatic music on the saxophone. At the age of 11, Anvita began her Carnatic saxophone training from Dr. Sumanth Swaminathan. After 1 year of learning from Dr. Swaminathan, Anvita continued extensive training under the tutelage of late Padmashree Kalaimamani Dr. Kadri Gopalnath, and she would travel to India every summer to receive advanced training from him. Over the past several years, Anvita has performed in several decorated venues such as Shanmukananda Hall, Krishnagana Sabha, Rasikaranjani Sabha, and Vani Mahal in India. Furthermore, Anvita has received several awards from prestigious festivals and shows such as Cleveland Tyagaraja Festival, Chicago Tyagaraja Utsavam, and Carnatic Idol. She also regularly performs in and around America for marriages, traditional concerts, religious functions, and dance performances. Anvita just graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a degree in public health, and she enjoys teaching Carnatic music on the saxophone to her students in her free time. Anvita has agreed to have a chat with us for Yuvayamini as part of the Yuvayamini Inspiration Series. And here we go. Welcome, Anvita Hariharan. We are so happy to have you here, and we're so happy that you agreed to speak to us and to inspire our young students.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Great. So, Anvita, we'll start with. I want you to talk about your music journey. How did it start? When the entire journey up till now.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start my journey from just where I started saxophone would not do justice to my full musical experience. So the first music I learned was Vaipattu when I was quite young. Actually, my sister had learned Vaipattu, my older sister, from when she was very young. So because of that, I've grown up listening to a lot of Carnatic music and just being exposed to it from a very young age, which was extremely helpful in my learning process. After that, I wasn't able to sustain Vaipattu for very long. I just did not have interest in it. I did Bharatanatyam for about 6 to 7 years. And then I learned some Vaipattu again, kind of, went back and forth. But what really piqued my interest was I started learning Western clarinet at school. And that was the first time I had played an instrument. And I was very, very invested and very interested in it. So one day we were at the Coville and we saw my teacher, Dr. Sumanth Swaminathan, performing. And he was playing Carnatic music on the saxophone. And so my parents approached him and said, "Oh, would you be able to teach Anvita on clarinet?" And he said that clarinet, saxophone, they're not too different. They're quite similar. So why don't you try picking up saxophone? And so honestly, this was when I was 10 years old. So I first started when I was 11. And I went into it thinking, okay, this is going to be another one of those things which I just do for 3 months or so, and then I'm going to call it quits. But it has been 11 years now, still going strong, and I love it so much. So that's kind of how my journey began with Carnatic saxophone. So I learned from Dr. Sumanth Swaminathan for several years, but about 1 year into learning, he is also, by the way, a disciple of Sri Kadri Gopalnath, sir. And so when I started learning from him about a year in, he was quite impressed with the speed at which I had progressed through Carnatic music. And it's definitely all owed to the fact that I grew up listening to so much Carnatic music that I knew what the music was. I just had to convert it to a different instrument. And so about 1 year in, he said, "You are ready to go see Mama." And so that was when I was 12 years old was the first year I went to India to study under Sri Kadri Gopalnath, sir. And then I would learn from Kadri Mama during the summers, and I would continue to learn from Sumanth uncle throughout the rest of the year. And that went on like that for a few years. And then eventually I progressed to a level where I was ready to give performances and concerts. And about 4 or 5 years into my learning, I started going to India, to Chennai, for what is very popularly known as the Chennai music season. The December music season happens every year in December. It's extremely popular. So I started going to perform in some smaller sabas and start to kind of spread my name and build my experiences playing. So at that point, from then until about now, I have been going to India twice a year. During the summers, I would go to train under Kadri Mama. And then during the winters, I would go to perform, as well as obviously accompany Mama on his performances and also learn from him then as well. So that's kind of what has brought me up till this point. And I continue to play. I have my own students now. And so it's been quite the journey, but it's definitely worth it.
Wow, that is quite a journey. That's lovely. And the fact that since you've been 12, you've been traveling to India to learn an instrument, that's truly inspiring. So did you need a lot of convincing to travel to India to learn something, or?
So I actually wouldn't say I needed convincing per se, but throughout the process, obviously, when I started, I wasn't even a teenager, right? I was just an 11-year-old. So it's kind of just what your parents tell you to do, and then that's what you do. But obviously, along the way, you go through some difficult years, and then you don't want to do this anymore and whatnot. And during that point in time, my parents I was just talking about this with my mom the other day. They were pivotal in helping me stay on this track and on this journey. It was never that I didn't want to go to India or I didn't want to study more. It was just sometimes they'd have to nudge me to practice, or they'd have to nudge me to, you have to practice for class or do this. But because of that, I never let go of the art form, and I am where I am now, which is definitely, I wouldn't have been here without my parents. So no, I wouldn't say I needed convincing, but there was definitely a lot of helpful support along the way.
Yes, absolutely. Parents do know best most times, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excellent. So this first question and your answer to that has given me so many ideas for the next few questions. So I would like to come back to the role that your parents played, but first I'd like to ask you, what has been your experience with your gurus? I'm sure you did come here every year, and so that itself is quite different from the way most children learn. Can you tell us some interesting incidents around that?
Absolutely.
And the attached question to that is, one is just nice incidents for us to hear about Shri Kadri Gopalnath ji.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, what did you learn from him? Just coming here and learning from him, what were your learnings from your interaction with your guru? There are two questions here. One is slightly lighthearted. One is a little more, giving us something to take away.
Yeah. So I will go into a little bit about both of my gurus because they both were extremely key in my musical career. So first, starting with Sumanth uncle, he was actually, when he started teaching me, he was about in his mid-20s. So he was not too much older than me, kind of like an Anna to me. So we had a very close relationship. I even went to him with my math homework and I would say, I need help with this. So we had a really great time playing back and forth with each other. And then especially once I started going to Mama, we were able to connect on a different level because he was a student of Mama and I had become a student of Mama as well. So we understood more on the same level of, okay, what does it take to play this instrument, or how it really means to go under that like India training. So it was amazing learning from Sumanth uncle, and he really built the best foundation for me. Some of the best things that I would say I learned from him is that you have to create your own style. He never believed in the idea that if you fall out under a padandaram, that is exactly the way you play. You can't play anything else. He always believed that, oh, if you listen to a different recording that you enjoy, take something from that. If you find something from this school, take something from that, which I still do today. And I think he is the reason why I am able to play various forms of a song as opposed to just one padandaram, which is awesome. And then moving on to Kadri Mama. Kadri Mama and I also had a very close relationship, but that took time to build. So when I first went to India, obviously I was just 12 years old. I can tell you the first experience I had with Mama so I was very short. Obviously, at the age of 12, and the saxophone was larger than me. So I had to sit on a stool in order to play the saxophone. I would keep the saxophone on the ground and I would sit on a stool and play on it. And Mama was so tall that he would put his saxophone on top of a stool to play. And so when he first met me, that was the point which he has carried throughout my entire journey of learning with him. He always makes fun of me for how short I am. And every single year he would get so excited by seeing the stool size decrease a little and a little. So that was my first experience with Mama, and it continued throughout the years. But that being said, keeping on the lighthearted side, Mama was a very, while he had his big saxophone personality, he was also a very loving and caring person. And so another great anecdote, which I'll always remember, is I once went to class and he knows that I can pick things up fairly quickly. And one day just nothing was going into my head. He was telling me some line and it was just going in one ear, out the other ear. And he would tell me over and over and I would keep playing it wrong. And where another teacher normally would have gotten mad, he understood me and understood the type of student I was. And he was like, "You're hungry. I know that you're hungry. Let's take a break. You eat some Mari biscuits." He asked someone to bring me Mari biscuits, and then they did. We sat, we ate, he talked for a little bit, then we resumed class again. That just goes to show the type of person that Mama was, and most people didn't get to see that side of him. They only saw the side which sat on stage. But Mama would take me shopping. He would take me to go eat at my favorite restaurant when I stayed with him in Mangalore. So we had so many amazing memories that really created a very strong Gurushishya relationship between us. And that carried forward to the music as well, because we were able to understand each other on a better level. So that being said, going over to more of the music side, some of the things that I've learned from him, obviously, Mama is the highest level of player that there is for a saxophone, Carnatic saxophone player. He was the one he was the very first person to adapt Carnatic music to the saxophone. And so there's really no one who understands it better than him. And he really taught me the importance of dedication and what it takes to become a Carnatic musician. He has seen more trials and tribulations than most. Throughout his very early years in his career, he was not really accepted as a musician because no one knew what the saxophone was. They just knew it was a Western instrument. And they would say that, "Oh, you can't play Carnatic music on that." But his perseverance and determination is what led him to become one of the most well-known names in Carnatic music. And so he always would tell me, he's like, "You need to play this song 100 times before you go on stage. It needs to be perfect." Or, you know, how much I had to practice to get to this level or to play at this concert. And so he really taught me, even more than just the music, the values and the hard work it takes to become a Carnatic musician. So that I will always cherish. Did that answer your question?
That's beautiful. Yes, of course. Of course, very well answered. And you gave us a lovely glimpse of him as a person, and what he took away as a student. So that's great. I mean, we can go on talking about this, but I'm going to move on because it's we want to time bound this interview.
Right.
But
right.
And so then coming back to the role of your parents, can you? So I'm sure it's a lot of hard work, right? Coming for a good 1 or 2 months from the US,
Yeah,
and kind of wrapping up your life there and putting it on hold for some time and then coming here. What is that? Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah.
And you said you have a sister, so
Yeah.
I'm sure there
Yeah.
are some logistics. Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the role of my parents cannot be overstated in my Carnatic music journey. I would not be where I am today without them. Well, they were first the ones who obviously got me interested in Carnatic music, and they always knew better than I did that I had a knack for music. I just didn't know where to apply it because singing was not an interest for me. Dancing I enjoyed, but it wasn't something I was going to do long term. But they knew I had that music in me because when my sister would learn music, when she would learn a song, the next day I would walk around the house singing it. So they noticed that I am able to understand music and reproduce it, but they were the ones who found the right avenue for me to do that in. So that was the first part. And then from there, I mean, like you said, every year they have taken me to India, not just once, but twice a year. And like you mentioned, I have an older sister. So that often became difficult because my sister, Nikita, would have to be here for either she would have an internship or for school or something. So one of my parents would stay here and then one of my parents would come with me to India. And that alternated on my mom and dad. But that meant that we never got to be together as a family for summer vacation or for our winter vacation or for holidays and stuff like that, which is definitely difficult. But because of those sacrifices that they made, I was able to learn so much and I was able to have this experience now, which I would have never had. So yeah, they played an immense role and continue to play an immense role in my they come to every single concert. Even if I don't want them to, they will be there. They will be in the first row. My dad will be holding the camcorder and my mom will be socializing and talking to everyone. So they are still my number one supporters today.
That's lovely. That's lovely. You mentioned earlier that, you grew up listening to a lot of Carnatic music because obviously I think your parents listen to a lot of Carnatic music. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes on that. How can you tell young students who are watching this, how important is it to listen? How important is listening? It's a huge part of becoming a musician, right? So can you tell us a little about that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would say 80% of your musical knowledge will come from listening, not from classes, not from practicing, not from whatever like involving your art form. It's just from listening. That is where all of your knowledge of ragams will come from, listening to different styles, different musicians, whether it's vocalist or instrumentalist. It is so, so important to listen. And that's even something I harp on to my students, that it is so important to listen. Even actually this coming Saturday, I have a concert and I'm playing a ragam which I've never played before. So I'm sitting and listening to that ragam to try and understand the nuances of that ragam so that I can deliver it properly. Without listening to it, I mean, I would just be taking a guess on how the ragam sounds. So the importance of listening to music cannot be overstated. And especially, I will say, from a young age, it really puts you at an advantage because at those young ages, you grasp so much more information than when you do when you're older. So definitely, if anyone is interested in Carnatic music, listening is the number one and the last step. It's everything about learning music.
Great. And then the other huge thing is practice. And a lot of young students don't like the word practice. But how has it worked for you? How do the influencers in your life, how do they make it seem like a non-issue for you?
Yeah. So, one, I am a very competitive person. And so if I'm placed in a competition or if my peers around me are doing better than me, that really drives me to do better. But the time during which I practiced the most was when I went to India. So in Chennai, actually, I have no family really in Chennai. I have one Periyamme, who lives in one part of Chennai, but during the first whole half of my trips to Chennai, we didn't ever stay with any family. We would rent apartments. And so in those apartments, there would be no internet, there would be no TV, nothing. So all I had was my music. So the way my day would typically look like is I would wake up, I would practice, and then I would eat lunch, I would go to class, I would come back, I would practice. I had class every single day, and he would teach me 1 or 2 songs, full songs every single day, which meant they needed to be perfect by tomorrow, absolutely perfect. And so wake up in the morning, practice, shower, whatnot, eat lunch, practice again, then go to class, come back, practice, eat dinner. If I'm not good enough with my practice before, practice again, and then go to sleep and rinse and repeat. And that was my whole life. During that time, I was practicing about 4 to 6 hours a day without the classes. And then on top of that, we would have class, which sometimes was half an hour, sometimes it was 2.5 hours, just depended on how the day went. But definitely, it was very intense and a lot of practice. And then actually when I would go with Mama to his house in Mangalore, sometimes I would go stay with him alone and his family there for 1 week. And during that time, it was like a Gurukulam. So I would wake up in the morning and he would say, okay, sit for class. So I would sit, and then he'd say, okay, now go practice. So I would go practice, and I'd sit and keep practicing. And then he would yell from his room, he'd go, tappe, which is wrong. And so then he'd say, come. And then we would have class again. So it was just the full days long of practicing, because your guru's in the next door room listening to what you're doing. So it really, during those years, it was a lot of practice. And that's what really, every single year you could see my growth go from like here to here because of that level of practice.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Actually, it's not many students have this opportunity to have the true Guru Shishya Gurukulam setting.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And the fact that you didn't, you just completely immersed into the art form for a good 1 or 2 months a year is such a lovely thing to have happened.
Yeah,
you're so blessed.
Even that Gurukulam would only happen for around 1 week during that like 1 or 2 months that I went. But even then, during that like 1 week period of time, it was a different experience.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for that story. And especially because this year we called, the theme for Yuvayamini was the Gurushishya Parampara. So it's a lovely story to have received for this. So I'm going to wrap this up with one last question. What are your dreams and aspirations as a musician? I know you also have a job, right?
I do. I just started. Yeah, I just graduated college, and so I just started my job, which definitely makes it difficult to practice as much as I used to. But as for my goals for later on, I never want to leave saxophone. It's never something that I want to quit. I do want to continue performing. I perform in Kalyanam kacheris, or I'll perform in regular kacheris. This weekend, I'm doing a Jugalbandi with actually Kadri. Mama used to do Jugalbandis very frequently with Ronuji on the Bansuri. And so his student and I are doing a Jugalbandi in honor of our gurus. So that's super exciting. So new opportunities like this are always extremely exciting, and it's something which I want to continue doing. On top of that, I know that Mama had big goals for me, and he wanted me to go very far. And so one thing which I would be a huge dream of mine one day would be to play in the music academy, because still saxophone is not quite seen as the most accepted instrument in the Carnatic world. But I definitely want to continue Mama's legacy in changing that stigma and bringing more people into the world of saxophone and proving that it really is an instrument that is beautiful and can do Carnatic music just as well as any other instrument can.
That's great dreams. And like you said, what you say also reflects this one philosophy with which we started Yuvayamini, because there is no learning music, there is no destination to it really. It's a continuous journey, and every every part of the journey is to be celebrated and enjoyed, and the journey is the destination, really, right?
Absolutely.
So that's lovely talking to you, Anvita. We thank you again for being on, coming forward and having this conversation with us. We will follow up this interview with your performance, and thank you for recording that too. So that ends our interview, Anvita. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.